What's going on, guys? It's Fight Season MMA, and today I want to talk about the recent news and kind of possible matchup between Arman Tsarukyan versus Charles Oliveira 2 at UFC, possibly Abu Dhabi, UFC NYC, UFC Vegas in December. Coming up here, I think that there is going to be a matchup between Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan for the UFC lightweight interim title, and you might be thinking, why is this matchup going to happen? These two just fought at UFC 300. But I think it was such a close fight that the UFC is looking to make this matchup again for an interim title, since Islam Makhachev is going to be out for a little bit because of that hand. If you guys enjoy the UFC content, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. That is the best way to support the channel. Also, please go down there and hit the like button and the post notifications, just so you guys are always in tune with the latest UFC news and content. But let's jump right into the video of why I believe Arman Tsarukyan versus Charles Oliveira is going to get scheduled sometime here very, very soon for the UFC interim lightweight title. Okay, so as we all know, Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan was a fight on the main card at UFC 300, and it was an absolute banger of a fight. It was so close. Charles Oliveira had Arman Tsarukyan in so many different submissions, had him in a Darce choke at the end of the third round, had him in a guillotine in the first round where Arman's pants were falling off. It was an amazing fight and an absolute crazy fight where Arman Tsarukyan ended up getting the win in a split decision victory over Charles Oliveira. And now we all know that Arman Tsarukyan was going to go and fight Islam Makhachev for the title next, possibly in Abu Dhabi or in Madison Square Garden. But apparently Islam Makhachev's arm, I think it's his right hand, is injured from that Dustin Poirier fight, or it was a training incident after the Poirier fight. So apparently Islam Makhachev is going to be out for a little bit, which only makes it logical to make an interim title fight. And Arman Tsarukyan says he is 100% good to go fight for the interim title. Now, originally, Dustin Poirier came out and said that he wanted to fight for the UFC interim title against Arman Tsarukyan. And yes, Dustin Poirier just faced Islam Makhachev for the UFC lightweight title back in June at UFC 302 as the main event there. And I don't think that this fight's going to happen, since Dustin Poirier just came off a loss to the title, and I don't think that the UFC would automatically thrust him back into a title shot after coming off a title loss. Now, that could be different because of his name, but I don't think that is going to be 100% valid. But the fight I do think that is going to happen is going to be Arman Tsarukyan versus Charles Oliveira 2 at either UFC 308, 309, or 310. And why do I say this? Because these two just fought. This fight was so close between the two that genuinely the MMA community was so split on who won this fight. I think on the night I was watching it and I was out, and I believe Arman Tsarukyan won that fight that night because that control time in the second round was able to do it, and the Darce choke was not late enough in the round because Arman Tsarukyan was winning that, and the Darce choke was Charles Oliveira's final effort to truly get out of that fight. And I know there was some controversy if Arman Tsarukyan tapped in that final minute or if he went out, but putting your body closer to the ground apparently was a technique that Arman Tsarukyan was training to defend against the Darce choke because it takes a lot of pressure off your neck. But Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan as the interim title fight would be an amazing fight to have. We all know Arman Tsarukyan is an absolute beast out there. He knocked out Beneil Dariush in a minute. He's had some absolute wars inside the UFC, and he just came off beating the former champion in Charles Oliveira. And Charles Oliveira is a former champion. He will go out there. He's beat the likes of Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler, Tony Ferguson when Tony was good. He was on a 11-fight win streak, I may believe, and then he lost to Islam Makhachev at UFC 280, but this fight is an absolute banger of a fight to have between Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan 2. I was so excited for this fight coming up at UFC 300. It was one of the best fights that you could possibly make in the organization, and to have it with higher stakes in the line, I do think would only bring out the better of the two of the fighters. Now, why do I think that the rematch would happen compared to someone like compared to anyone else in the division, there's not really that many people who deserve a title shot in the UFC lightweight division. The only person that you could consider giving it to would be Gamrot. And the reason I don't like Gamrot getting the decision or getting that title shot, one, he's already booked against Dan Hooker at UFC 305 coming up here in the next week and a half. But two, he's really hasn't beat any top competition. He did beat Arman Tsarukyan, which was a very good win in his book, and that would be the rematch between the two. I'm not saying that Gamrot hasn't beat anyone, but he beat Rafael Fiziev, when he got absolutely cooked in that first round, and Fiziev tore his ACL in that second round, so he won off of doctor stoppage. In that he beat Rafael Dos Santos at UFC 299, which was a very good win. It was a very dominant win. He beat Jalen Turner at UFC 285, which in my opinion was a very close fight, and a fight that Mateusz Gamrot could have lost, but I just see it as Gamrot hasn't beat anyone in the top competition yet. In a dominant win over Dan Hooker could definitely get you a title shot. Dan Hooker is an absolute dog in that UFC lightweight division. He's fought the likes of Dustin Poirier and Islam Makhachev, and he is an absolute dog in that division. He takes no prisoners. He fights anyone that you want to. And now Dan Hooker with the tattoos is going to be absolutely crazy in that UFC lightweight division. So I think if Gamrot possibly gets this win and comes out unscathed, I think you could do a fight between Arman Tsarukyan versus Mateusz Gamrot, but I do think that the fans and the draw would be towards Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan too. Now, who do I think would win that fight in the rematch? That is a very good fight in the rematch, and that would be something I would have to think about. You would have to go to Arman Tsarukyan right now just because he won the first fight, but considering how close it was, I don't want to be completely definitive saying Arman would win. I would have to go watch the first fight, see who would make adjustments, and truly see of how each fighter would be able to go into this fight. Arman's really good in the wrestling department and against the ground because of how much he's trained and how much he's done submission work, but Charles Oliveira has the most submissions in UFC history, and I think he has the most finishes in lightweight history, which is absolutely insane. But Charles Oliveira is an absolute dog. Arman Tsarukyan is an absolute dog, and having this for the interim title with the biggest stakes on the line, winner faces Islam Makhachev, so it would either be Charles Oliveira versus Islam Makhachev 2, or Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan 2 for the UFC lightweight title coming up very soon, and I do think that is the fight to make in the UFC lightweight division. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fights is an MMA, and please let me know what you think about this possible rumored matchup between Arman Tsarukyan and Charles Oliveira 2 for the UFC interim lightweight title. I really wanted to see Islam versus Arman because these two fought previously and it went to a 5-round decision. So I do think that Arman's style would be a good style to go up against Islam, but I do think that Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan is an action-packed fight. And as it's a great alternative since Islam Makhachev is hurt on the sidelines and recovering from that hand injury. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fights is an MMA. And please hit that subscribe button. I know 97.2% of my subscribers or viewers are not subscribed. So please go down there and hit that subscribe button. It would mean an absolute ton to help support the channel on my road to 1,000 subscribers. And plus, turn on the post notifications if you guys are a fan of the videos and you guys want to stay updated with the daily MMA content that I release. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Fights is an MMA, and I will catch you guys very, very soon with more UFC content and news.